Beneath the rolling waves of the Atlantic, hidden by centuries of ocean currents and layers of sand, lies one of history's most tantalizing mysteries, a lost city of towering spires, advanced technology, and a civilization that vanished without a trace. This isn't just the stuff of legends, it's the story of Atlantis, a place first brought to life by the ancient philosopher Plato over 2,000 years ago. In his dialogues, he described a powerful, sophisticated society that thrived before it was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of catastrophe. But here's the question that has haunted explorers, scholars, and dreamers for millennia. Was Atlantis real, or was Plato weaving a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris and the fragility of human achievement? The allure of Atlantis isn't just about a sunken city, it's about the endless human fascination with the unknown. From ancient maps to modern satellite imagery, from treasure hunters to deep-sea archaeologists, the search for Atlantis has captivated imaginations across cultures and centuries. It's inspired novels, films, and even scientific expeditions, all chasing the same elusive truth. What if Plato wasn't just spinning a myth? What if he was recording a memory, a faint echo of a real civilization lost to time? The idea that an advanced society could disappear without leaving a definitive trace challenges everything we think we know about history, and that's where the real adventure begins. In this journey, we're not just retelling an old story, we're diving into the heart of the mystery. We'll unpack Plato's original accounts, line by line, to separate fact from fiction. We'll explore the wildest theories, from volcanic eruptions to alien interventions, and weigh the evidence that modern science brings to the table. Could Atlantis have been a real place, hidden somewhere in the depths of the Mediterranean or beyond? Or is its true power the way it reflects our deepest fears and aspirations about disaster, about progress, about the secrets still lurking in the shadows of history? Strap in, because we're about to embark on an exploration that blurs the line between myth and reality, and by the end, you might just see the legend of Atlantis in a whole new light. Plato's account of Atlantis comes to us through two of his most intriguing dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. Written around 360 BCE, these texts are our earliest and only direct source for the legend. In them, Plato describes Atlantis as a vast, powerful island kingdom located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. This wasn't just any civilization. It was a marvel of engineering and ambition, with concentric rings of land and water, grand temples plated in gold, and a society so advanced it seemed almost otherworldly. Plato even credits the Atlanteans with advanced naval power, sophisticated agriculture, and a level of prosperity that made them the envy of the ancient world. But then catastrophe struck. According to Plato, Atlantis provoked the wrath of the gods with its arrogance and warmongering. In a single day and night of earthquakes and floods, the entire island was swallowed by the sea, vanishing beneath the waves forever. It's a dramatic story, one that feels almost cinematic in its scale. But here's where things get interesting. Plato presents Atlantis not as a myth, but as a historical fact. He even gives precise details, like its size larger than ancient Libya and Asia combined, and its location in the Atlantic Ocean. So, was he recounting a real event, or was there a deeper purpose to this tale? Many scholars argue that Atlantis served as a cautionary fable, a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and moral decay. Plato lived in a time of political turmoil, and his writings often explored themes of ideal governance and the consequences of corruption. Atlantis, then, might have been a literary device, a way to illustrate what happens when a society becomes too proud, too greedy, too blind to its own flaws. But there's another possibility. What if Plato was preserving a half-remembered truth? Some researchers suggest he could have been drawing on older stories, perhaps of real disasters like the volcanic eruption that devastated the Minoan civilization on Thera around 1600 BC. What's striking is that no other ancient sources mention Atlantis. No Egyptian records, no Greek historians, no surviving texts from Plato's contemporaries. This silence has fueled skepticism for centuries. If Atlantis was real, why didn't anyone else write about it? Then again, history is full of lost cities and forgotten empires. Maybe Atlantis was one of them, its memory preserved only through Plato's pen. The real mystery isn't just whether Atlantis existed, it's why this story has gripped humanity for so long. Is it the allure of a lost golden age, the chilling reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can fall? Or is it something deeper, the tantalizing possibility that beneath the ocean, hidden from sight, lies proof of a past we've only begun to imagine? Whatever the answer, Plato's words set the stage for a debate that would span millennia, inspiring explorers to scour the globe for clues. And as we'll see next, their interpretations took the legend in directions even Plato might never have predicted. Plato's Atlantis wasn't just debated in modern times, even the ancients couldn't agree on whether it was fact or fable. Aristotle, Plato's own student, famously dismissed the story as pure invention, a literary device to teach moral lessons rather than a record of real events. He saw it as allegory, not history, but not everyone in the ancient world shared his skepticism. Centuries later, the philosopher Proclus argued fiercely for Atlantis's existence, claiming Plato's account was grounded in truth, perhaps even drawing on lost Egyptian records. This split in ancient opinion mirrors the same division we see today. Was Atlantis a cautionary tale, or a civilization wiped from the map? What's fascinating is how Atlantis fits into a much larger tapestry of global flood myths, stories that span continents and cultures, all echoing the same terrifying theme. The biblical tale of Noah's Ark, the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh with its great deluge, even the Hindu legend of Manu surviving a world-ending flood in a massive ship, these narratives share uncanny similarities. Water, destruction, rebirth, could these be distant memories of real catastrophes? Some researchers point to events like the flooding of the Black Sea around 5600 BCE, or the collapse of ancient coastal settlements as possible inspirations. The idea isn't that every myth describes Atlantis specifically, but that humanity might be collectively remembering real, devastating floods that reshaped the ancient world. Then there are the lesser-known legends that feel hauntingly familiar. Take the Celtic story of Wise, a wealthy city said to have sunk off the coast of Brittany after its gates were left open during a storm. Or the Indian city of Dwarka, described in ancient texts as a glittering metropolis swallowed by the sea after a divine curse. These tales all follow a pattern, a great society, often advanced or morally flawed, meeting a watery end. Coincidence or something more? The deeper you look, the harder it becomes to dismiss these connections as pure imagination. Whether it's the Aztecs' warning of past worlds destroyed by floods or Aboriginal Australians speaking of ancestral lands lost beneath rising seas, the consistency is striking. Even if Atlantis itself was fictional, the universality of these stories suggests they're tapping into something primal, a shared human experience of catastrophe, survival, and the fragile line between civilization and ruin. So here's the question that lingers. If so many cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, kept telling versions of the same story, could there be a kernel of truth buried in all that myth? And if so, what does that mean for our understanding of history's lost chapters? For centuries after Plato, Atlantis faded into obscurity until the Renaissance, when Europe's rediscovery of classical texts brought the lost city roaring back to life. Scholars, intoxicated by Plato's vivid descriptions, began treating Atlantis not as fable, but as a historical puzzle waiting to be solved. The humanist thinker Marsilio Ficino translated Plato's works in the 15th century, igniting debates in royal courts and universities. What had been a moral allegory for the ancients suddenly became a tantalizing possibility. Could the ruins of this advanced civilization still lie hidden beneath the waves? The Renaissance mind, hungry for both knowledge and wonder, embraced Atlantis as a bridge between the mythical past and an age of exploration. By the 19th century, Atlantis had fully shed its allegorical skin, reborn as the centerpiece of wild historical speculation. No one embodied this shift more than Ignatius Donnelly, a Minnesota politician turned amateur archaeologist whose 1882 book Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, became a sensation. Donnelly argued that Atlantis wasn't just real, it was the mother culture of all ancient civilizations. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Mexico, even the myths of distant India. All echoes, he claimed, of this single lost superpower. His theory was equal parts scholarship and fantasy, stitching together geological anomalies, linguistic coincidences, and flood myths into a sprawling tapestry of pseudo-history. Critics dismissed him, but the public devoured his ideas, and suddenly, Atlantis wasn't just a philosopher's parable, it was a global obsession. This era also saw Atlantis hijacked by the mystical underground. Secret societies like the Rosicrucians wove it into their esoteric lore, suggesting Atlanteans possessed magical knowledge lost to time. Madame Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical movement, took it further, claiming Atlantis was home to a race of spiritually advanced beings whose secrets could unlock human evolution. These visions transformed Plato's city into a symbol sometimes of utopian hope, sometimes of occult power. The irony, Plato had warned against the hubris of Atlantis, yet now it became a beacon for those seeking lost wisdom or hidden truths. The 20th century brought a new twist. Science entered the conversation. Oceanography advanced, and sonar mapped the seafloor in unprecedented detail. Suddenly, the search for Atlantis wasn't just about dusty books or mystical visions. It was about geology, archaeology, and hard evidence. Some pointed to the volcanic wreckage of Santorini as a plausible inspiration for Plato's tale. Others scoured the Atlantic for submerged landmasses like the Azores Plateau. The legend had evolved yet again, no longer just a myth or a metaphor, but a mystery that might, against all odds, yield to modern technology. And that's where the story takes its most fascinating turn among the many theories about Atlantis. One stands out for its chilling blend of geological fact and historical tragedy. The idea that Plato's story was inspired by the real-life destruction of the Minoan civilization on the island of Thera, modern-day Santorini. Around 1600 BCE, this volcanic paradise exploded with a force estimated to be 4 times stronger than Krakatoa, triggering earthquakes, towering tsunamis, and a blanket of ash that stretched across the Mediterranean. The Minoans, a sophisticated seafaring culture centered on Crete, were thriving one day, their palaces adorned with vibrant frescoes, their trade networks stretching from Egypt to the Aegean, and the next, their world was shattered. The eruption didn't just bury Thera, it sent shockwaves through the entire region, collapsing coastal cities and plunging the Minoans into irreversible decline. Sound familiar? The parallels between this catastrophe and Plato's Atlantis are hard to ignore. Plato describes a circular city with concentric rings, a layout eerily similar to Thera's volcanic caldera before it collapsed into the sea. He writes of a civilization at the height of its power, suddenly wiped out by earthquakes and floods. The Minoans, too, were advanced beyond their time, with multi-story buildings, intricate plumbing systems, and artwork so lively it feels modern. The ruins of Akrotiri, a Minoan settlement preserved under Thera's ash, reveal a snapshot of a society frozen in its prime, much like Pompeii. Even Plato's timeline, though off by centuries, could reflect a garbled oral tradition passed down through generations. But here's the catch: Thera sits in the Aegean Sea, not the Atlantic Ocean where Plato placed Atlantis. Critics argue this discrepancy is fatal to the theory. Why would a philosopher so precise about details misplace an entire island? Some scholars suggest Plato might have deliberately relocated the story to the Atlantic, a mysterious realm at the edge of the known world, to heighten its mythical weight. Others propose that Egyptian priests, who allegedly told the tale to Plato's ancestor Solon, could have confused the geography over centuries of retelling. After all, the Greek word for beyond could have been misinterpreted, shifting Atlantis from beyond Crete to beyond Gibraltar. The Thera theory also raises a bigger question. If Atlantis was inspired by a real disaster, why didn't Plato name it directly? Perhaps because the Minoans had already faded into legend by his time, their story reshaped into moral allegory. Or maybe the eruption's trauma lived on in collective memory, morphing over generations into a cautionary tale about divine punishment. Whatever the case, the haunting beauty of Santorini today, its whitewashed villages perched atop the volcanic rim, hides a darker truth beneath the postcard views. The same forces that created this paradise also destroyed it, leaving behind a mystery that continues to echo in Plato's words. Yet Thera isn't the only candidate for Atlantis's real-world inspiration. From the sunken ruins of Helike in Greece to the marshlands of southern Spain, other locations offer their own compelling clues. Each carries fragments of the story: a sunken city here, a forgotten civilization there, waiting to be pieced together like a grand, unsolved puzzle. And as we'll see next, the search for Atlantis isn't just about finding a place. It's about deciphering how myths and memories intertwine across the centuries. While the Thera eruption offers a compelling Mediterranean inspiration for Atlantis, another theory points west, to the mysterious kingdom of Tartessos, a wealthy Bronze Age civilization that flourished in what is now southern Spain. Known for its vast silver mines and legendary king, Arganthonios, Tartessos was a real-world marvel, mentioned by ancient Greek historians like Herodotus as a land of unimaginable riches. Then, around 500 BCE, it vanished from the historical record, leaving behind only cryptic references and a scattering of artifacts. Could this be the kernel of truth behind Plato's Atlantis? Proponents of the Tartessos hypothesis highlight striking parallels. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar, and Tartessos sat just northeast of this landmark, nestled in the marshy delta of the Guadalquivir River. These wetlands, prone to flooding and seismic shifts, could explain Plato's description of Atlantis sinking into the sea. Modern excavations in the area have uncovered Tartessian ruins, including intricate gold jewelry and stone tablets inscribed with an undeciphered script, hinting at a sophisticated culture that met a sudden, catastrophic end. Even the name Tartessos bears a curious resemblance to Tartarus, the Greek underworld, a poetic twist that might have inspired Plato's tale of divine punishment. But the Tartessos theory isn't without its skeptics. Unlike Atlantis, Tartessos wasn't an island, and its disappearance seems to have been gradual, linked to trade decline or political upheaval rather than a single cataclysmic event. Some scholars suggest Plato could have merged multiple disasters: Thera's violent eruption, Tartessos' decline, even the flooding of ancient coastal cities into one grand allegory. After all, myths often weave together threads of truth, reshaping them to serve deeper themes. This raises a fascinating possibility. What if Atlantis wasn't inspired by one place but many? From the sunken ruins of Helike, swallowed by an earthquake in 373 BCE, to the legendary city of Wise in Brittany, cultures worldwide have passed down stories of drowned civilizations. These tales share a common DNA: water, hubris, destruction, suggesting a universal human fascination with the fragility of power. Whether Plato drew from Tartessos, Thera, or a tapestry of half-remembered tragedies, his Atlantis endures not because it points to a single lost city, but because it speaks to something timeless, the fear that even the mightiest societies can vanish in the blink of an eye. As the search continues, new candidates emerge from the Azores Plateau to the Caribbean, each offering fragments of the puzzle. But perhaps the real lesson of Atlantis isn't about finding a sunken city at all. It's about why we keep looking and what these lost worlds tell us about ourselves. In the vast, sun-scorched expanse of Mauritania's Sahara Desert lies a geological oddity so striking, it's visible from space: the Richat Structure, often called the Eye of the Sahara. This massive, bullseye-shaped formation, nearly 30 miles across, has become the centerpiece of a modern Atlantis obsession. With its concentric rings of rock and eerie resemblance to Plato's description of Atlantis's layout, it's no wonder theorists like YouTube researcher Jimmy Bright have declared it the lost city's true location. Satellite images only fuel the intrigue, revealing what looks like the ghostly imprint of a circular city, complete with what could be interpreted as canals or walls. But does this natural wonder hold the key to the Atlantis mystery, or is it just another case of wishful thinking projected onto the Earth's rugged surface? Geologists have a far less mythical explanation for the Richat Structure. They argue it's the result of hundreds of millions of years of erosion, a dome of layered rock that slowly collapsed inward, creating its distinctive rings. There's no evidence of human construction, no ruins, no artifacts, no sudden geological upheaval that would match Plato's catastrophic sinking. The Sahara itself was far wetter thousands of years ago, but nothing in the archaeological record suggests a sprawling, advanced civilization ever thrived here. Mainstream archaeologists dismiss the Atlantis connection as pure fantasy, pointing out that the Richat's formation is entirely natural, with no signs of the gold-plated temples or bustling harbors Plato described. Yet the allure persists. Fringe researchers counter that mainstream science overlooks subtle clues. They highlight ancient riverbeds nearby, now dried up, that could have once fed a thriving city. Some even claim to spot geometric patterns in the structure's layout, suggesting deliberate design rather than random erosion. Jimmy Bright's viral videos dissect these details frame by frame, arguing that the Richat's alignment with solstice sunrises and its proximity to the Atlantic, just west of the Pillars of Hercules, fit Plato's coordinates too perfectly to ignore. But without physical proof, these theories remain in the realm of speculation, a digital age echo of the same hopeful searching that has fueled Atlantis hunters for centuries. The real challenge with the Richat theory isn't just the lack of evidence, it's the timeline. Plato placed Atlantis's fall around 9,000 years before his time, but the Sahara's climate shifts don't align with a sudden, civilization-ending flood. If the Richat was ever inhabited, it would have been by smaller, nomadic groups, not the sprawling empire of Plato's account. Still, the idea taps into something deeper. Our desire to solve ancient mysteries with modern tools, to look at a satellite image and see not just rock, but the shadow of a forgotten world. As tantalizing as the Richat theory is, the search for Atlantis hasn't been limited to land. Oceanographers and deep-sea explorers have scoured the Atlantic floor, hunting for submerged ruins that might match Plato's description. From underwater sonar scans off the coast of the Azores to strange rock formations near the Bahamas, the ocean holds its own set of enigmatic clues, each one a potential piece of the puzzle, waiting to be deciphered. And that's where the story takes its next dramatic turn beneath the turquoise waves of the Bahamas. A strange formation lies just off the coast of Bimini, a half-mile stretch of massive, rectangular limestone blocks arranged in near-perfect lines. Discovered in 1968, the so-called Bimini Road immediately sparked Atlantis speculation. Could these eerily geometric stones be the remnants of a paved highway or harbor wall from a lost civilization? At first glance, the precision seems uncanny, as if human hands had carefully placed each block. But geology tells a different story. Scientists argue this is a classic example of beak rock, a natural formation where limestone fractures along straight lines due to tidal erosion, creating the illusion of deliberate construction. Carbon dating places the rocks at around 2,000 years old, far too recent for Plato's Atlantis. Yet the allure persists, fueled by divers who swear the arrangement feels too orderly to be random. The Bimini Road isn't the only underwater anomaly to ignite Atlantis theories. In 2001, sonar scans off Cuba's western coast revealed what appeared to be symmetrical structures sprawled across the seafloor nearly 2,000 feet down. Tabloids breathlessly declared it Atlantis, pointing to what looked like pyramids and sprawling plazas. But marine geologists quickly identified these formations as ancient sandstone, shaped by currents and tectonic shifts over millennia. Similarly, Japan's Yonaguni Monument, a towering, terraced structure discovered near Okinawa in the 1980s, has been called everything from a sunken city to an alien outpost. While its sharp angles and stair-like edges seem artificial, most researchers attribute it to natural sandstone fracturing, with some acknowledging that ancient humans might have modified pre-existing rock for ceremonial purposes. The pattern here is telling. Time and again, our eyes trick us into seeing human design where nature alone is the architect. It's a phenomenon called pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find familiar shapes in randomness, like seeing faces in clouds or animals in rock formations. When it comes to lost civilizations, we're especially prone to this bias, projecting our fantasies onto the ocean floor. That doesn't make these sites less fascinating. It simply reframes the mystery. Instead of hunting for sunken cities, we might ask why humans are so desperate to find them. Is it about proving Plato right, or is it about the thrill of discovery itself? The idea that our planet still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Technology is now shifting the search from speculation to science. Advanced sonar, underwater drones, and satellite imaging have transformed ocean exploration, allowing researchers to scan vast areas with unprecedented precision. Projects like the Seabed 2030 initiative aim to map the entire seafloor by the end of the decade, potentially revealing formations that earlier generations could only dream of spotting. Even if these tools haven't found Atlantis, they've uncovered legitimate wonders, from deep-sea hydrothermal vents teeming with life to submerged caves preserving ancient human artifacts. The real treasure might not be a golden city, but a deeper understanding of Earth's hidden landscapes. So where does that leave the legend? Perhaps the greatest lesson of these underwater enigmas is that truth can be as compelling as myth. The ocean doesn't need Atlantis to be mysterious. Its depths hold enough genuine marvels to keep explorers busy for centuries. And who knows, maybe one day, a discovery will blur the line between geology and archaeology in ways we can't yet imagine. Until then, the search itself reminds us that the world is far stranger and far more wonderful than any single story can capture. The ocean has always been Earth's final frontier, its depths darker and more mysterious than the surface of the moon. But in the last few decades, technology has begun peeling back those layers of mystery, revealing secrets that would have been unimaginable to Plato or even explorers a century ago. Advanced sonar systems capable of mapping the seafloor down to centimeter precision have transformed underwater archaeology from guesswork into a science. Submersibles like Alvin and remotely operated vehicles like Noah O'Connor's Explorer now plunge into trenches and scan continental shelves, capturing high-definition footage of shipwrecks, hydrothermal vents, and even potential man-made structures hidden for millennia. One of the most ambitious efforts, NOAA Mediterranean exploration, has uncovered submerged cities like Pavloptri off the coast of Greece, a 5,000-year-old settlement perfectly preserved beneath the waves. These discoveries prove that Plato's vision of a drowned civilization isn't pure fantasy. The Mediterranean alone holds countless ruins, from sunken Roman harbors to Neolithic villages, all lost to rising seas after the last ice age. But here's the catch: the ocean covers 70% of the planet, and less than 20% of its floor has been mapped in detail. That leaves vast, uncharted regions where anything could be waiting, including, perhaps, the remnants of a society advanced enough to inspire Atlantis. The challenges, though, are staggering. Pressure at extreme depths crushes equipment like tissue paper. Currents distort sonar signals, creating false readings that fuel wild theories. And the sheer scale of the search is mind-bending. Finding Atlantis in the Atlantic would be like locating a single grain of sand on a beach the size of a continent. Yet every year, new tools emerge. Autonomous underwater drones, AI-assisted image analysis, and even satellite-based bathymetry are shrinking the unknown, turning what was once myth into a quantifiable possibility. But why does Atlantis still captivate us when science offers so many tangible wonders? Maybe because it represents more than a lost city, it's a mirror. In an age of climate change and rising seas, Atlantis is a warning about civilizations undone by their own hubris. It's also a testament to human curiosity, the drive to explore even when answers lie buried under miles of water. The legend endures not because we've found proof, but because the search itself reminds us how much history remains written in places we've yet to reach. And that's the real magic. The ocean's deepest secrets are still out there, waiting for the next breakthrough to bring them into the light. Long before modern explorers scanned the ocean floor with sonar, Atlantis had already risen from the depths, not as a physical city, but as a powerful symbol in the stories we tell. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea sent Captain Nemo's submarine past the ruins of Atlantis in 1870, framing it as a haunting relic of human folly. This wasn't just adventure, it was a mirror. Verne's industrial age readers were grappling with rapid technological progress, and his Atlantis became a cautionary backdrop, a reminder that even the most advanced societies could crumble beneath the weight of their own ambitions. Fast forward to the Cold War era, and Atlantis took on new shades of meaning. The 1961 film Atlantis, The Lost Continent, depicted the city as a dystopia powered by slave labor and deadly lasers, echoing fears of nuclear annihilation and totalitarian regimes. Here, Atlantis wasn't just lost, it was a warning of what humanity might become if greed and power went unchecked. Then came Disney's 2001 animated film Atlantis, The Lost Empire, where the city shimmered with crystal-based energy, a utopia undone by its own technological hubris. Released just years after the Y2K scare and amid growing environmental awareness, the film's Atlantis was both a paradise and a tragedy, its downfall tied to the reckless exploitation of natural resources. These adaptations reveal a pattern. Atlantis evolves with our anxieties. In the 19th century, it symbolized the perils of industrialization. In the 20th, it reflected nuclear dread and environmental collapse. Today, it's resurfaced in video games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where Atlantis is a high-tech labyrinth tied to ancient aliens, a nod to contemporary obsessions with AI and lost advanced knowledge. Each iteration asks the same question: are we doomed to repeat Atlantis's fate, or can we learn from its legend? But why does this story endure? Psychologists point to something deeper than moral lessons. Lost civilizations like Atlantis tap into a primal human fascination with the unknown, the thrill of discovery, and the ache for forgotten wisdom. They let us play with dualities, past and future, ruin and rebirth, the fear of collapse and the hope of rediscovery. Atlantis isn't just a place, it's a blank canvas where we project our deepest fears and wildest dreams. Whether portrayed as a sunken dystopia or a beacon of lost enlightenment, its power lies in its ambiguity. And that's why, long after the last sonar scan fades, the legend will keep resurfacing, not in the ocean, but in the stories we can't stop telling. There's something primal about the way Atlantis clings to our imagination, a story that refuses to fade, no matter how many times science tries to sink it. Carl Jung, the famed psychologist, would argue this isn't just about a lost city. It's about the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of myths and symbols buried deep in the human psyche. Atlantis, in this light, isn't merely a place. It's an archetype, a recurring dream of hubris and punishment, of greatness swallowed by the sea. Jung believed these stories surface across cultures because they tap into universal fears: the fragility of civilization, the specter of disaster, the nagging sense that everything we build could vanish in an instant. Sound familiar? In an age of climate crises and geopolitical instability, Atlantis feels less like ancient history and more like a warning whispered across millennia. Yet for all its darkness, the myth also carries a flicker of hope, the tantalizing idea that lost wisdom might still be out there, waiting to be rediscovered. This duality is what makes Atlantis so enduring. On one hand, it's a cautionary tale about arrogance and decay. On the other, it's a beacon for explorers and dreamers, a symbol that the past might hold answers to our future. Consider how often Atlantis is depicted in pop culture as a repository of advanced technology or esoteric knowledge. From comic books to conspiracy theories, the lost city becomes a mirror for our own aspirations. What if the ancients knew something we've forgotten? What if their collapse holds the key to our survival? This tension between fear and hope explains why Atlantis outlasts other myths. Unlike, say, the tale of Icarus, a straightforward parable about overreach, Atlantis is expansive enough to hold contradictions. It's both a tragedy and a mystery, a lesson and a lore, and that's where misconceptions thrive. Some conflate Plato's original account with later embellishments, turning Atlantis into a catch-all for every fringe theory about ancient aliens or hyper-advanced civilizations. Others strip it of nuance, reducing it to either pure fiction or undisputed fact. The truth, as usual, lies somewhere in between. Plato's Atlantis was likely a blend of memory and metaphor, a story shaped by real disasters like Thera's eruption but polished into a moral fable. Debunking the myths doesn't diminish their power. If anything, understanding Atlantis as a psychological and cultural phenomenon makes it richer. It's not just about whether a city sank, it's about why we keep diving for it, both literally and figuratively. The next time you hear a wild theory about Atlantis, ask yourself, is this about finding ruins, or is it about confronting the parts of ourselves that still fear and crave the abyss? The hunt for Atlantis has spawned more than just theories. It's also given rise to outright hoaxes, blurring the line between legend and deception. Take the infamous crystal skulls, carved from quartz and touted as relics of lost civilizations like Atlantis or the Maya. For decades, these artifacts fueled speculation about ancient advanced technology, until scientific analysis revealed the truth. They were likely crafted in the 19th century using modern tools. The same goes for Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet, who claimed to channel visions of Atlantis in the 1930s. His detailed descriptions of energy crystals, flying machines, and even the exact location of Atlantis near the Bahamas captured the public's imagination. Yet not a single one of his predictions has ever been verified by archaeology. These stories thrive because they tap into our desire for the extraordinary, but they often overshadow genuine discoveries, muddying the waters of real research. Pseudoarchaeology doesn't just mislead, it actively harms the field. When sensational claims dominate headlines, they divert attention and funding from legitimate science. The quest for Atlantis has been particularly vulnerable to this, with charlatans cherry-picking data or manipulating images to prove their theories. One notorious example is the alleged underwater ruins near Cuba, where grainy sonar images were hailed as Atlantis before experts debunked them as natural rock formations. These cycles of hype and disappointment create skepticism, making it harder for serious scholars to explore legitimate mysteries without being lumped in with fringe ideas. The irony, many real archaeological wonders like the sunken city of Heracleion off Egypt's coast are just as breathtaking as any myth, but they rarely get the same attention because they lack the allure of the unknown. This isn't to say all unconventional ideas are worthless. Sometimes, fringe theories push researchers to investigate overlooked areas, like when the search for Atlantis led to the rediscovery of the Minoan. But the key difference is methodology. Real science demands evidence, peer review, and a willingness to abandon hypotheses when they don't hold up. Pseudoarchaeology, on the other hand, often starts with a conclusion: Atlantis was real, and twists facts to fit. It's a reminder of how easily confirmation bias can distort our view of the past, especially when we want so badly for certain stories to be true. So where does that leave Plato? If so many modern interpretations of Atlantis are flawed, why did he write about it in the first place? Some scholars argue his motives were purely philosophical. Atlantis wasn't meant to be a historical account but a parable about the dangers of imperial overreach, tailored for his Athenian audience. Athens itself had recently suffered a catastrophic defeat in the Peloponnesian War, and Plato's story of a mighty empire brought low by its own arrogance would have hit close to home. Others suggest he might have been critiquing contemporary societies like Persia or even his own city's failed ambitions. Either way, the power of Atlantis lies not in its reality, but in its symbolism, a mirror held up to every generation, reflecting our deepest anxieties about power, progress, and the fleeting nature of glory. The next time you hear a bold claim about Atlantis, ask yourself, is this filling a gap in history, or is it filling a gap in our collective imagination? The answer might reveal less about the past and more about why we keep searching for it. Plato never wrote a single word without intention. Every dialogue, every myth was a carefully crafted tool to probe deeper truths, and Atlantis is no exception. To understand why this story has endured, we need to step back from the treasure maps and sonar scans and ask what Plato was really trying to say. His famous allegory of the cave, after all, wasn't about literal prisoners chained underground. It was a metaphor for ignorance and enlightenment. So why would Atlantis, a story tucked into his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, be any different? Some scholars argue it's a veiled commentary on the rise and fall of Athens itself, a city that had recently overreached during the Peloponnesian War, only to collapse under the weight of its own ambition. The parallels are striking. Plato describes Atlantis as a naval superpower, its armies launching conquests across the Mediterranean, mirroring Athens' own imperial ambitions under Pericles. The Atlanteans grow arrogant, their hearts swollen with unjust greed, until the gods punish them with cataclysm. Sound familiar? Athens, too, had overextended. Its disastrous Sicilian expedition in 413 BC marking the beginning of its downfall. Plato, who came of age during this turmoil, might have been using Atlantis as a cautionary tale for his fellow citizens. This is what happens when power corrupts. Even the story's framing is telling. Atlantis is said to have fallen 9,000 years before Plato's time, a distance so vast it feels less like history and more like myth-making. But here's where it gets complicated. Plato also insists Atlantis was real, even providing specific details: its size, its location beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Was he hedging his bets, blending factual inspiration with moral allegory? Or was this simply part of his rhetorical style, grounding philosophical lessons in vivid, seemingly concrete imagery? His other allegories, like the cave or the ring of Gyges, were never meant to be taken literally, yet Atlantis occupies a unique space, hovering between parable and lost history. This ambiguity has fueled debate for centuries. Some historians point to Plato's disdain for Athenian democracy, suggesting Atlantis symbolizes the dangers of unchecked popular rule. Others see it as a critique of imperialism, a warning to Sparta and Persia as much as Athens. And then there's the geological angle. Plato's description of Atlantis sinking aligns uncannily with real events like the Sahara eruption or the flooding of the Black Sea, hinting that he might have woven ancient disaster myths into his narrative. The truth likely lies in layers. Plato was a philosopher, not a historian. His Atlantis could simultaneously critique Athenian hubris, echo dimly remembered catastrophes, and challenge readers to ponder the cyclical nature of civilizations. To reduce it to just a metaphor misses its power. To insist it's only a lost city ignores its deeper resonance. And that duality, the interplay of myth and memory, warning and wonder, is what keeps us diving back into the depths, searching for answers in the shadows where history and allegory meet. Now, if Atlantis was inspired by real floods, where's the evidence? Geological records reveal that our planet has endured dozens of catastrophic deluges, from the Mediterranean's rising waters at the end of the last ice age to the sudden inundation of Doggerland, a vast landmass once connecting Britain to Europe. These weren't mere local events, they reshaped continents, erased cultures, and left scars in the collective human psyche. Plato, living in a maritime world where oral traditions stretched back millennia, might have inherited fragments of these disasters, weaving them into a tale that feels both timeless and eerily prescient. The question isn't whether he invented Atlantis whole cloth, but what truths about nature, about humanity, he wrapped in its legend. Long before Plato penned his tale of Atlantis, the Earth itself was writing stories of catastrophe, real, verifiable disasters that reshaped coastlines and civilizations. One of the most dramatic unfolded around 6000 BC off the coast of Norway, where the Storegga slide sent a chunk of continental shelf the size of Iceland crashing into the depths. The resulting tsunami wasn't just a localized event. Waves over 60 feet tall raced across the North Sea, swallowing entire coastlines. Evidence of this deluge has been found in submerged peat beds off Scotland and Norway, where ancient forests were ripped apart by the force. For the hunter-gatherer communities living along those shores, it would have been an apocalypse, a wall of water rewriting their world in a single day. Could memories of this trauma have survived orally for thousands of years, morphing into Plato's tale of a civilization swallowed by the sea? Equally compelling is the Black Sea deluge theory, which proposes that around 5600 BCE, rising Mediterranean waters burst through the Bosporus, transforming a freshwater lake into the salty expanse we know today. Geologists have found submerged river valleys and ancient shorelines beneath the Black Sea, suggesting a rapid inundation that could have displaced entire communities. Imagine the survivors, those who fled to higher ground, passing down stories of a great flood, each retelling blurring the details until the event became legend. These aren't just hypotheticals. Flood myths exist in nearly every culture bordering the Black Sea, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical story of Noah. The parallels to Atlantis are uncanny: a prosperous land, a sudden watery demise, and a moral about divine retribution. But here's the twist: oral histories are like geological strata, layered and distorted over time. A single tsunami might become a global flood in retellings. A localized quake could grow into the wrath of the gods. Anthropologists call this process mythic inflation, where real events are amplified through generations, blending with symbolism and moral lessons. The Minoan eruption of Thera, for example, might have started as a cautionary tale about volcanic fury before evolving into Plato's grand allegory of hubris. This doesn't mean these myths are false. It means they're palimpsests with traces of truth buried beneath layers of interpretation. This is where archaeology becomes the ultimate mythbuster or myth confirmer. Take the discovery of Doggerland, a vast, now submerged plain that once connected Britain to Europe. Fishermen have dredged up mammoth bones and Stone Age tools from the North Sea for centuries, but only recent sonar mapping revealed the full extent of this lost landscape. Here was a real Atlantis, swallowed by rising seas around 6500 BCE, its disappearance preserved in snippets of folklore across northern Europe. Unlike Plato's Atlantis, Doggerland wasn't a glittering metropolis, it was a Mesolithic hunting ground. Yet its fate echoes the same themes: human vulnerability to nature's whims and the fragility of memory. The challenge for archaeologists is separating geological fact from mythic embroidery. When divers found a Neolithic village off Israel's coast, preserved under 10 feet of water, it wasn't Atlantis, but it proved that entire settlements could vanish beneath the waves. Similarly, the sunken city of Pavloptri in Greece, dating back 5,000 years, shows how even Bronze Age communities could be erased by rising seas. These finds don't validate Plato's specifics, but they anchor his broader premise. Civilizations really do drown, and their stories linger like shadows in the collective memory. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in what these discoveries reveal about human resilience. From Storiga to Doggerland, survivors didn't just vanish, they adapted, carrying fragments of their shattered worlds to new shores. The same impulse that turned tsunamis into legends also drove them to rebuild, to keep telling stories. And that's the real magic of archaeology. It doesn't just dig up ruins, it uncovers the stubborn, hopeful thread that connects all humanity, from the first flood survivors to Plato's readers to us, still searching for Atlantis today. The ocean keeps its secrets well. Even with today's cutting-edge technology, we've mapped less of the seafloor than we have the surface of Mars. Vast stretches of our own planet remain uncharted, hidden under crushing depths and swirling currents. This isn't just a logistical challenge, it's a humbling reminder of how much history might be lying in wait beneath the waves. Take Doggerland, the ancient land bridge between Britain and Europe, swallowed by rising seas around 8,000 years ago. For centuries, fishermen trawling the North Sea hauled up strange artifacts, flint tools, mammoth bones, hinting at a lost world. Only recently, with advanced sonar, did archaeologists piece together the full scope of this submerged landscape, rolling hills, river valleys, even evidence of human settlements? If an entire continent could vanish and leave barely a trace, what else might be out there? But here's the catch: finding Atlantis isn't just about covering more ocean. It's about distinguishing myth from material evidence. Every year, underwater archaeologists make legitimate breakthroughs, like the sunken city of Heracleion off Egypt's coast. Its colossal statues and gold coins preserved in the silt for millennia. These discoveries prove civilizations do drown, yet they also highlight the stark difference between a verified ruin and a speculative fantasy. The ruins of Heracleion were identified through inscriptions, artifacts, and their alignment with known historical records. Atlantis, by contrast, exists solely in Plato's texts, with no corroborating anchors, no pottery shards, no temple foundations, no coins stamped with Atlantean kings. That hasn't stopped explorers from trying. Modern expeditions scour the Atlantic for anything resembling Plato's concentric rings, from the Azores Plateau to the Caribbean. Some focus on geological anomalies, submerged volcanic calderas that mirror Atlantis's circular design. Others hunt for man-made clues like the so-called Bimini Road, later debunked as natural beach rock. The thrill of the search is undeniable, but without tangible proof, these leads dissolve like salt in water. Even if we someday uncover a sunken city matching Plato's description, how would we confirm it's the Atlantis and not just another forgotten culture? This is where competing theories collide. Some scholars argue Atlantis was never meant to be found, that Plato's vivid details were narrative flourish, not GPS coordinates. Others insist we're looking in the wrong places, suggesting the story migrated across cultures like a game of ancient telephone. Could the original Atlantis have been in the Mediterranean, its location shifted westward over time? Or was it always a philosophical ghost, a mirror held up to every generation's fears and ambitions? The answer might lie not in the ocean's depths, but in how we choose to read between Plato's lines. The real lesson here isn't just about Atlantis, it's about the delicate dance between discovery and delusion. The ocean will always tempt us with the possibility of lost worlds, but history rewards patience, not wishful thinking. For every Doggerland, there are a dozen false leads. For every Heracleion, 100 hoaxes. Yet the search continues, not because we're sure of what we'll find, but because the act of looking reminds us how much is still unknown. And in that vast, uncharted mystery, perhaps the spirit of Atlantis lives on not as a place, but as a promise that the next great discovery is always just beyond the horizon. Now let's turn to the theories that refuse to fade, the ones that transform Atlantis from a sunken city into something even stranger. From ancient astronauts to energy crystals, the fringe interpretations take Plato's tale in directions even he couldn't have imagined. Among the wilder theories about Atlantis, few are as chilling or as scientifically flimsy as the idea that the lost city lies buried beneath Antarctica's ice. Proponents of this fringe notion argue that ancient maps, like the infamous Peary Rise chart from 1513, show Antarctica free of ice, suggesting a time when advanced civilizations might have thrived there. They claim Atlantis wasn't swallowed by the sea but entombed by glaciers, preserving its wonders under miles of frozen wilderness. It's a captivating image, golden spires glittering under polar ice, waiting to be uncovered like some cosmic time capsule. But here's the problem: geology doesn't lie. Antarctica's ice sheet formed at least 34 million years ago, long before humans walked the Earth. Even if continental drift had positioned it closer to the equator in Plato's imagined timeline, the idea of a temperate, habitable Antarctica within human history is pure fantasy. The myth gains traction partly thanks to creative misinterpretations. The Piri Rise map, for instance, does show a landmass near South America, but scholars agree it's likely a distorted portrayal of Tierra del Fuego or a speculative addition by the Ottoman cartographer. There's no evidence early explorers knew of Antarctica's existence, let alone mapped it ice-free. Yet this hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from weaving elaborate tales, often cherry-picking anomalies like alleged pyramid-shaped mountains or ancient ruins spotted in satellite images, features easily explained by natural erosion and pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see patterns in randomness. Enter H.P. Lovecraft, the master of cosmic horror, who gave this theory a fictional twist in his 1936 novella At the Mountains of Madness. Lovecraft's Antarctica hides the ruins of an alien-built city, its grotesque architecture hinting at horrors beyond human comprehension. While purely imaginative, his tale blurred lines between myth and pop culture, inspiring generations to project their own fantasies onto the frozen continent. The irony, Lovecraft himself dismissed Atlantis as a silly legend, yet his fiction inadvertently fueled its modern mystique. What's revealing about the Antarctica theory isn't its accuracy, it's the pattern it exposes. From Nazi expeditions searching for Hyperborea to modern-day UFO hunters claiming alien bases under the ice, this desolate landscape serves as a blank canvas for our wildest speculations. It's a phenomenon anthropologists call polar exceptionalism, the idea that Earth's poles, so remote and inhospitable, must harbor lost worlds or hidden truths. This taps into the same psychological drive that once filled old maps with "Here be dragons," a need to cloak the unknown with mystery. But if Antarctica's ice rules it out as Atlantis, why does the idea persist? Perhaps because it mirrors a deeper cultural theme, the fear of forgotten epochs, from Inuit legends of ancient races buried in snow to modern climate anxieties about rising seas. Icy cataclysms haunt our collective imagination. Antarctica isn't just a continent, it's a symbol of time's erasure, a place where history itself feels frozen in limbo. And that, in the end, might be the real connection to Plato's tale. Not a shared geography, but a shared metaphor for how easily civilizations can vanish, leaving only whispers in the wind. Now consider how this stacks up against other global flood myths. The Maori speak of Te-Hukata, a land swallowed by waves, while the Cherokee tell of a great flood sparing only a few survivors on a mountaintop. These stories, like Atlantis, aren't just about water. They're about resilience, the fragility of human achievement, and the stubborn hope that something endures even when the world drowns. Whether set in frozen wastes or sunken cities, they remind us that every culture grapples with the same existential question: what happens when the ground beneath our feet disappears? From the Aztecs' tale of the fourth sun, drowned in a deluge that wiped out the jaguar-headed giants, to the Aboriginal Dreamtime stories of a great flood sent to cleanse the land, civilizations across time and geography have passed down eerily similar narratives of watery cataclysm. The K.H. Myers Popolvuh describes a world-ending flood punishing humanity's wooden predecessors, while the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh recounts Utnapishtim's ark surviving a storm so furious even the gods trembled. These stories aren't mere coincidences, they're threads in a global tapestry of trauma, woven by cultures that never met. But does this mean they're all echoes of a single ancient disaster, or do they reveal something deeper about how humans process catastrophe? One compelling theory points to the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, when melting glaciers triggered sea level rises of over 300 feet. Coastal settlements from Doggerland to Sunderland would have vanished beneath the waves, their survivors carrying tales of encroaching waters for generations. Archaeologists have found submerged villages off India's coast and in the Persian Gulf, their stone tools and pottery silent witnesses to this slow-motion apocalypse. Yet not all flood myths align with this timeline. Some, like the biblical Noah's Ark, may reflect localized river floods like the Tigris-Euphrates overflowing its banks. The universality of these stories might stem less from a shared event than a shared vulnerability. Water, both life-giver and destroyer, is humanity's oldest adversary. Atlantis's legacy takes a darker turn when co-opted by nationalism. In the late 19th century, as European powers scrambled for colonies, some theorists twisted Plato's myth to justify racial superiority. Theosophists like Helena Blavatsky claimed Atlanteans were the root race of Aryans, while Nazi pseudoarchaeologists funded expeditions to Iceland and Tibet, searching for Atlantis's pure-blooded descendants. This distortion reveals how easily a lost civilization can become a political tool, a blank slate for projecting ideologies. Even today, fringe groups invoke Atlantis to fuel separatist movements, from Basque nationalists to Caribbean activists framing their islands as the last remnants of a drowned utopia. The irony is palpable. Plato's allegory about the dangers of imperial arrogance was itself weaponized by empires, yet the persistence of flood myths stripped of these manipulations offers a humbling reminder. Whether inspired by rising seas or moral lessons, they echo a truth as deep as the ocean that every society, no matter how grand, dances on the knife's edge of oblivion. And perhaps that's why Atlantis endures, not as a place to find, but as a mirror to our own fragility. Few stories have been twisted to serve darker agendas than the myth of Atlantis. In the early 20th century, as nationalist movements surged across Europe, the lost city became a tool for propaganda, most infamously in the hands of the Nazis. The Third Reich's obsession with Atlantis wasn't just fringe mysticism. It was part of a calculated effort to fabricate a glorified Aryan past. Figures like Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, funded expeditions to Iceland and Tibet, searching for what they called the ancestral homeland of a supposed master race. Their pseudo-scientific theories claimed Atlanteans were blonde, blue-eyed superhumans whose bloodline had been diluted by inferior peoples. This wasn't just fantasy, it was dangerous myth-making, designed to justify genocide under the guise of historical revival. The roots of this distortion stretch back further than the Nazis. In the late 19th century, occultists like Helena Blavatsky wove Atlantis into their racial hierarchies, declaring it the cradle of the root race, a mythical Aryan precursor. These ideas, though dismissed by scholars, seeped into extremist ideologies where the allure of a lost golden age proved irresistible. The irony is staggering. Plato's tale, meant to warn against imperial arrogance, was repurposed to fuel the very hubris he condemned. By the 1930s, Nazi archaeologists were scouring Europe for Atlantean relics, bending artifacts and folklore to fit their narrative. Even the swastika, an ancient symbol found across cultures, was falsely linked to Atlantis as proof of Aryan supremacy. This wasn't unique to Germany. Across the Atlantic, white supremacist groups in America latched onto similar myths, using Atlantis to argue for segregation or eugenics. The pattern is chillingly consistent. Take a vague, ancient legend, strip it of context, and reshape it into a weapon. What makes Atlantis so vulnerable to this manipulation? Its ambiguity. With no physical evidence to anchor it, the story becomes a blank slate for anyone's agenda, whether nationalist, racist, or utopian. The lesson here isn't just about Nazis or pseudoscience, it's about the ethics of archaeology itself. When we dig into the past, we're not just uncovering artifacts, we're shaping narratives. Real archaeology demands rigor, peer-reviewed research, verifiable evidence, and a willingness to follow the facts wherever they lead, even if they shatter cherished myths. Contrast the Nazis' treasure hunts with modern efforts like the excavation of Troy, where painstaking layers of sediment revealed a real city entangled with legend. One approach sought to prove a biased fantasy, the other to understand humanity's shared heritage. This tension between myth and history hasn't faded. Today, conspiracy theorists still invoke Atlantis to promote everything from white nationalism to anti-immigrant rhetoric. The antidote isn't just debunking, it's teaching critical thinking. When we separate fact from fiction, we honor the past instead of exploiting it. Archaeology's greatest value lies not in propping up ideologies, but in uncovering the messy, magnificent truth that human history is too vast, too diverse, and too interconnected to fit into any single narrative. As we move from the shadows of propaganda to the light of ethical research, the next chapter of the Atlantis story takes an unexpected turn, one where science, not speculation, leads the way. Cutting-edge technologies are transforming how we explore the ocean's depths, not in search of a fictional utopia, but to recover the real, complex civilizations that did rise and fall beneath the waves. And in that search, we might find something even more remarkable than Atlantis, the truth about ourselves. The hunt for Atlantis isn't just a quest for knowledge, it's a race against time, greed, and the irreversible damage done by those who value profit over preservation. Take the controversial case of the so-called Atlantis off Cyprus, where treasure hunters, armed with little more than speculation and dredging equipment, tore through potential archaeological sites in search of gold and glory. What they left behind wasn't answers but scars, disturbed sediment layers, shattered artifacts, and a trail of destruction that erased clues about the past. This isn't exploration, it's looting disguised as discovery. The irony is painful. In chasing a legend about a civilization punished for its hubris, modern-day adventurers repeat the same mistakes, prizing short-term gain over the protection of humanity's shared heritage. The stakes couldn't be higher. Underwater archaeology is a delicate science where every fragment of pottery, every alignment of stones, holds information about trade routes, technologies, and daily life. When treasure hunters bulldoze through these sites, they're not just stealing artifacts, they're burning pages of history. UNESCO guidelines for underwater cultural heritage exist for a reason. They emphasize non-invasive techniques like 3D mapping and controlled excavations, ensuring that sites are studied, not stripped. These rules aren't arbitrary, they're born from hard lessons. The plundering of shipwrecks like the Belitung in Indonesia, where priceless Tang Dynasty ceramics were ripped from their context and sold to collectors, shows what happens when commerce trumps conservation. But here's the hopeful twist. The same technology that enables reckless treasure hunting also empowers ethical research. Advanced sonar, robotic submersibles, and machine learning can now survey the seafloor with minimal disturbance, letting archaeologists excavate digitally before touching a single stone. Projects like the Oxford-led survey of Pavloptri, a 5,000-year-old submerged city in Greece, prove how much can be learned without dredging. By creating precise 3D models, researchers preserve the site while uncovering its secrets from urban layouts to ancient trade goods. This is the future of Atlantis hunting, a marriage of curiosity and respect, where the goal isn't to claim trophies but to piece together stories. The debate over Atlantis isn't just about a lost city, it's about who gets to tell its story. Should it be private collectors hoarding artifacts in vaults, or scientists collaborating across borders to share knowledge? The answer shapes more than our understanding of Plato's tale. It defines how we honor every vanished culture, from the sunken villages of Doggerland to the flooded temples of Mahabalipuram. As we stand on the brink of a new era of ocean exploration, the choice is clear. We can either repeat the mistakes of the past, or we can dive deeper, not just into the water, but into the ethics of how we uncover what lies beneath. And with that foundation, the stage is set for a new chapter in the search, one driven not by greed, but by genuine wonder. The next generation of explorers isn't wielding shovels. They're programming algorithms, piloting drones, and working with local communities to protect the very sites they study. From the Mediterranean to the Pacific, these efforts are rewriting what it means to hunt for lost civilizations, proving that the greatest treasures aren't gold or crystal, but the truth itself. The hunt for Atlantis is entering its most thrilling chapter yet, not with shovels and diving bells, but with artificial intelligence and autonomous deep-sea drones. Imagine an algorithm trained on every surviving text from Plato's era, scanning for hidden patterns or overlooked clues about Atlantis's location, not just in Timaeus and Critias, but in obscure merchant logs, forgotten maps, or even marginal notes scribbled by medieval monks. Projects like this are already underway, with machine learning parsing ancient languages to reconstruct lost trade routes or climate shifts that might hint at cataclysmic floods. Meanwhile, robotic explorers like the Orpheus submersible, designed to withstand the crushing pressures of the Hadal Zone, are mapping the ocean floor with laser precision. These drones don't just take photos, they analyze sediment layers for traces of human activity, like unnatural concentrations of metals or the molecular ghosts of ancient fires. But what would definitive proof of Atlantis even look like? A sunken ringed city matching Plato's description would be the holy grail, but archaeology rarely offers such clear-cut answers. More likely, it would be a mosaic of clues, a cluster of man-made artifacts found far offshore, geological evidence of a sudden land subsidence, or even genetic traces in marine sediments suggesting a concentrated human presence where none should exist. The challenge is distinguishing Atlantis from the countless other drowned settlements we know existed, like the Neolithic village discovered beneath the Baltic Sea, its wooden stakes still standing after 8,000 years. Without an inscription literally saying, "Welcome to Atlantis," researchers would need a convergence of evidence, matching Plato's timeline, fitting his geographical hints, and showing signs of the advanced society he described. Yet, even as technology advances, the enduring power of Atlantis lies beyond mere discovery. This isn't just about finding ruins, it's about why the legend refuses to fade. Psychologists point to something called anomalous psychology, our brain's hunger for unresolved mysteries. Atlantis taps into that primal itch, the same one that makes us stare at optical illusions or obsess over unsolved codes. It's also a mirror for our times. In an era of climate anxiety, the idea of a civilization wiped out by natural disaster feels uncomfortably relevant. The myth endures because it's endlessly adaptable, a warning about hubris, a metaphor for lost knowledge, or even a hopeful sign that traces of the past might still be recoverable. The next breakthrough might come from an unexpected place, not the ocean floor, but a dusty archive. Recently, multispectral imaging revealed erased text in a medieval manuscript describing a great island swallowed by the Western Sea. Or it could emerge from geology, as studies of underwater landslides pinpoint new candidate locations for catastrophic sinkings. Whatever the future holds, the search for Atlantis has already given us something priceless, a reminder that history isn't just written in books, but buried in the earth, encoded in myths, and waiting beneath the waves for those willing to look. Atlantis isn't just a relic of ancient folklore, It's a mirror reflecting our own modern anxieties, especially when it comes to humanity's fraught relationship with the natural world. Plato's tale of a civilization wiped out by its own arrogance carries eerie echoes in an era of rising sea levels, deforestation, and extreme weather. Think about it, the Atlanteans, blessed with unimaginable wealth and technology, grew complacent, exploiting their environment until the gods, or in our case, the laws of physics, struck back. Sound familiar? Today, we face our own version of that reckoning, with climate scientists warning of tipping points and ecosystems pushed to the brink. The story of Atlantis isn't just a warning from the past. It's a parable for the present, reminding us that no society, no matter how advanced, is immune to the consequences of its own hubris. What's striking is how the legend resonates with contemporary environmental movements. Indigenous cultures worldwide have long spoken of living in harmony with nature, often framing their wisdom through stories of lost lands or floods brought by imbalance. The parallels are impossible to ignore. When coastal cities today prepare for submersion, when islands like Tuvalu face existential threats from rising oceans, Atlantis transforms from myth into metaphor. It's not about proving whether the city sank. It's about recognizing the patterns that lead civilizations to the edge. The Minoans of Thera, often cited as a possible inspiration for Plato's tale, didn't just vanish because of a volcano. Their downfall was likely exacerbated by over-reliance on a single trade network and fragile infrastructure. Substitute trade network with fossil fuels, and the lesson hits uncomfortably close to home. But here's where the story takes a hopeful turn. Atlantis isn't just a doom and gloom prophecy. It's a catalyst for curiosity and innovation. The same drive that sends explorers to scan the ocean floor for lost cities also fuels renewable energy breakthroughs and conservation efforts. Look at the Netherlands, a nation literally built on reclaimed land, now pioneering flood-resistant architecture. Or consider how coral reef restoration projects mimic nature's resilience. Much like the Atlanteans' legendary concentric rings might have been designed to withstand waves. The myth endures because it challenges us to ask, how do we balance progress with preservation? How do we avoid repeating the mistakes of the past while still reaching for the future? This is why Atlantis matters not as a dogma to cling to, but as a conversation starter. It invites us to explore without demanding absolute answers, to weigh evidence without dismissing mystery. Whether you're a historian piecing together ancient trade routes or a teenager joining a climate strike, the core question remains the same. What kind of ancestors do we want to be? The next time you hear about a glacier calving into the sea or a city investing in green infrastructure, remember, we're writing our own version of Atlantis right now, one decision at a time. And unlike Plato's doomed island, we still have the chance to change the ending. So here's where we turn the mic to you. What do you think Atlantis represents in today's world? A cautionary tale, a call to action, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the most exciting part of this mystery isn't uncovering the past, it's shaping what comes next. So now we turn the question over to you. Where do you think Atlantis might have been? The Mediterranean, with its sunken ruins like Pavloptri, the Atlantic, where the Azores Plateau hints at lost landmasses, or somewhere completely unexpected, like the Richat Structure's eerie rings in the Sahara. Drop your theories in the comments, and if you've got a favorite Atlantis myth to debunk, we'd love to hear that too. Maybe you're convinced the Bimini Road is just B-crock, or you've got a hot take on why Santorini's eruption doesn't quite fit Plato's timeline. This is one mystery where every perspective adds another piece to the puzzle. For those hungry to dive deeper, there's a treasure trove of books and documentaries worth exploring. Gavin Menzies' The Lost Empire of Atlantis spins a bold theory linking Minoan traders to global seafaring, while Charles Pellegrino's Unearthing Atlantis reads like a detective story, tracing Thera's volcanic fallout. On screen, the BBC's Atlantis, the evidence blends geology and history, and James Cameron's Atlantis Rising brings high-tech oceanography to the hunt. Just remember to approach these with a critical eye. The line between scholarship and speculation can get murkier than the ocean floor. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back to what makes Atlantis endure. It's not just about a sunken city, it's about the stories we tell to make sense of our world. Whether Plato's tale was inspired by real disasters or purely philosophical, it's become a mirror for our fears of environmental collapse, of forgotten knowledge, of civilizations rising and vanishing in the blink of geologic time. The search for Atlantis isn't just about uncovering the past. It's about grappling with the fragile threads that hold our own society together. And who knows, maybe the next big breakthrough is already out there, waiting to surface. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and most of all, keep wondering what other secrets the waves might be hiding. After centuries of searching, what do we actually know about Atlantis? The strongest evidence begins and ends with Plato himself, his detailed descriptions of concentric rings, advanced engineering, and a catastrophic downfall. No other ancient source corroborates his account, but the precision of his storytelling gives pause. He names ancestors, cites Egyptian priests as his sources, and pins Atlantis to a specific location beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This isn't the vague rambling of a mythmaker, it's the tone of someone recounting what he believes is history. Supporters also point to real-world parallels like the Minoan collapse on Thera. The volcanic eruption there mirrors Plato's timeline of sudden destruction, and the island's circular caldera resembles Atlantis's legendary design. Even the absence of other written records isn't definitive. Countless ancient texts have been lost to time, and oral traditions often fade before they're recorded. But the case against Atlantis is equally compelling. Plato's dialogues are philosophical works, not history books. He openly used allegory elsewhere, like the cave or the ring of Gyges, to illustrate moral lessons. Why would Atlantis be different? The lack of physical evidence is glaring. Despite advanced sonar and underwater archaeology, no submerged metropolis matching his description has been found in the Atlantic. Even candidates like Thera or Tartessos only fit pieces of the puzzle, never the full picture. Geologists also dismiss the idea of a landmass sinking overnight. Continental plates shift over millennia, not hours. And then there's Plato's own motive. Writing in a turbulent era, he may have crafted Atlantis as a critique of Athenian imperialism, using a fictional downfall to warn against greed and corruption. The real takeaway isn't a verdict, but the value of the search itself. Atlantis forces us to question how history is written and who gets to write it. Why do some stories endure while others vanish? How much of our past is buried beneath waves or hidden in the gaps between ancient texts? The legend thrives not because we've found answers, but because it keeps us asking better questions. Whether Atlantis was real or not, it's become a cultural touchstone, a way to grapple with humanity's greatest fears and fascinations. And in that sense, it's more than a lost city. It's a mirror reflecting our endless curiosity about the mysteries that still lie just beyond our reach. As we near the end of this journey, let's step back from the debates and consider what Atlantis means today. Beyond the theories and the trenches of academia, why does this story still resonate? Perhaps because it's not just about the past, it's about us. In an age of climate crises and technological upheaval, the idea of a civilization undone by its own ambition feels uncomfortably relevant. Atlantis is no longer just Plato's mystery. It's our warning, our inspiration, and above all, a reminder that the greatest discoveries often begin with the courage to wonder. Myths like Atlantis don't just live in the past, they shape how we understand history itself. Think about El Dorado, the golden city that lured conquistadors into the jungles of South America, or Shangri-La, the hidden Himalayan paradise promising eternal wisdom. These legends aren't just stories, they're windows into our collective psyche, revealing what each era values, fears, and desperately hopes to find. El Dorado mirrored the greed of colonial expansion. Shangri-La offered escapism from industrial chaos and Atlantis. It's the ultimate cautionary tale, a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can vanish, leaving only echoes behind. What unites these myths isn't their geography, but their function. They're mirrors held up to humanity, reflecting our deepest anxieties and aspirations. Consider how differently we treat these legends today. El Dorado, once a literal destination for treasure hunters, is now a metaphor for hollow ambition. Shangri-La, once a spiritual grail, has become shorthand for unattainable perfection. Atlantis, though, occupies a unique space. It's both a warning and an invitation. Unlike El Dorado, it's not about material wealth. Unlike Shangri-La, it's not about transcendence. It's about humility. The story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. What if our technology, our power, our progress aren't guarantees against collapse? What if history isn't a straight line upward, but a cycle of rises and falls? These aren't just philosophical musings, they're urgent conversations in an age of climate crises and political instability. Yet there's another layer to this. Myths like Atlantis also celebrate the joy of the unknown. In a world where satellites map every inch of the planet, where algorithms predict our desires before we feel them, Atlantis represents the last great mystery, a puzzle that resists solving. And maybe that's the point. The moment we find Atlantis, it ceases to be a legend and becomes just another archaeological site. The power of these stories lies in their elusiveness, their ability to keep us searching, questioning, and dreaming. That's why we cling to them, not because we want answers, but because we need the questions. This isn't to say we should stop investigating. Science and myth aren't enemies, they're collaborators. The search for Atlantis has led to real discoveries, sunken cities, ancient tsunamis, forgotten cultures, proving that even our wildest stories can guide us toward truth. The difference is in our approach. When we hunt for El Dorado, we strip the land. When we chase Shangri-La, we commodify spirituality. But when we explore Atlantis, we're forced to confront complexity, to balance curiosity with humility, to honor the past without romanticizing it. That's the real treasure, not a golden city, but a deeper way of engaging with history. So as we near the end of this journey, let's not rush to conclusions. The beauty of Atlantis isn't in solving the mystery, but in letting it breathe, in recognizing that some stories are too rich, too layered to be pinned down. They evolve with us, offering new insights with each retelling. Whether Plato's tale was fact, fiction, or something in between, its legacy is undeniable. It reminds us that history isn't just about dates and artifacts. It's about the stories we tell to make sense of who we are. And sometimes, the most enduring truths are the ones that stay just out of reach, shimmering beneath the surface, inviting us to dive deeper. Whether Atlantis was a real place swallowed by the sea or a brilliant allegory crafted by Plato, its power over the human imagination remains undeniable. This isn't just a story about a lost city. It's a testament to our endless fascination with the unknown, our hunger to uncover secrets buried by time. Atlantis transcends archaeology. It's become a cultural touchstone, a mirror reflecting our deepest fears of collapse and our brightest hopes for discovery. Think about it, every generation reinvents Atlantis to fit its own anxieties, from Cold War nuclear dread to modern climate crises. The legend endures not because we've found it, but because it challenges us to ask bigger questions about history, about progress, about the fragile threads that hold societies together. There's a reason explorers still scour ocean floors and scholars dissect Plato's texts. It's the same drive that sends rockets into space or probes into the Mariana Trench, the unshakable belief that there's more to learn. As Arthur C. Clarke once wrote, the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. That's the spirit of the Atlantis quest, not just solving a mystery, but embracing the wonder of the search itself. Whether you're convinced it's a sunken metropolis or a philosopher's parable, the story invites us all to keep digging, questioning, and marveling at the past's untold chapters. So here's where we leave you, not with answers, but with an invitation. History is full of enigmas waiting to be unraveled, from the Nazca lines to the Voynich manuscript. What fascinates you? Drop your favorite unsolved mystery in the comments. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into the past, hit that subscribe button. Because the greatest treasure isn't just uncovering lost worlds, it's sharing the journey with fellow explorers. As Plato himself might say, wonder is the beginning of wisdom. Let's keep wondering together.